Hi, I'm Pam. Can everybody hear me? I'm a film reporter with The Hollywood Reporter, and we're here today with some amazing women who have just founded We Do It Together, which is a nonprofit organization designed to really promote women in film, television, and other entertainment. And so I don't mispronounce everybody's name. So I don't mispronounce everybody's name because I know how tired we all are. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, beginning with Chiara, who is the founder of the group, but she can say her last name. Here you go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chiara Tilesi.
Avi Kaufman.
Carol Polakoff. Sandra Lucchesi.
And Sandra is an agent with Gersh. And so she's got a very, great view. And Carol is a producer, another person with, an amazing insight. And Avi is a longtime casting director, and Chiara also is a producer. So I guess I would like to start out by just saying, how did you guys come together to form the group?
At the beginning, it was Katja Lund, which I've worked with previously, had a film with Frida Pinto. And so in that week, we were talking about how we could possibly finance that movie because there was some difficulty because basically it was the story of a woman. And then in the same week, another couple of female directors had the same problem. So then the whole idea was, so if they're not giving us the money, to produce this movie, are we going to stop? Because we represent the majority of the population, right? So almost 52. So we want to watch this movie. Men want to watch this movie. It's just that there is a problem here. So what if we try something alternative?
And just not to interrupt you, what were some of the things you were told in terms of why people didn't want to finance the movie?
Because stories about women are not interesting, and we prove it wrong many times. From Erin Brockovich and many others. Unfortunately, they produce an Erin Brockovich every 10 years. So going back to the beginning, then we all went to Sandra Lucchesi, and it all happened in her couch when I came with this proposal. We do it. We don't do that together. No, we don't do that together. But we did that together in the couch. So we actually, I came up with this idea. What if we think outside of the box? Because of course there is a challenge, but there's not only one solution when there is one challenge. What if we create, a non-profit film production all together? So meaning men and women together, and in Hollywood and outside of Hollywood, with actors, directors, agent, and we create the first non-profit studio. And Sandra said, yes, we do it together.
Which is true. Chiara said that I can never sell my couch now, where it was incubated. But, it really came from all the articles that we saw, where not only Katya's film, we were having a hard time putting it together, but also all these, the statistics about women. And as an agent, I represent a lot of writer-directors, including people like Andrea Arnold, and, working within the studio system is very difficult, and Katja Lund is a client too, of course. So we were just brainstorming and came up with this can-do attitude, So we just decided to do something on our own, and the three of us then begot Carol Polakoff, and then so on, and it became a movement.
So, you have a very interesting viewpoint. I mean, what are some of the things you've heard over the years when you're trying to, represent your female clients and you go to the studio heads?
Well, first of all, it's really interesting because a number of my clients are independent filmmakers, writer-directors. It's always difficult to launch a woman into the studio system versus men, and I don't really understand it.
Well, I mean, what's your best guess?
They don't think that women can handle a big movie. Yeah, I think that's it. It's interesting, though, now times feel like they're changing a little bit. Like every studio has one female executive who's now designated to, scope out the women directors.
Is that true?
Kind of. And there's, in the TV world, they want to hear for the lists, they want to have a certain percentage of women. I think it's 15% on the suggestions that we make. So at least there's a little bit of an effort, but it's still incredibly difficult.
What's the biggest movie that you've ever had one of your female filmmakers do, if at all, at a studio?
I haven't.
And how many films have you
You know, they do very prestigious, independent films.
Do you think they want to work in the studio
Sure
system?
they do.
Right.
Sure they do. But
Right.
to launch a woman has been much more difficult.
Okay. Carol, what are your thoughts?
We all know the definition of insanity. So, why not do something different so that we can change the answer? We have, I think, launched something that is revolutionary, paradigm changing, and it will change the discussion. We don't want to take on the studios. Why would they take us on? They operate perfectly well without us. I mean, it's an uphill, it's a mountain that we don't even want to climb. So when Chiara came up with the idea of this nonprofit studio ecosystem of being able to find a way so that the meritocracy changes from P&A, who the main actor is, so that you can, or even actors for that matter, pre-sell the movie and take it back into the hands of the filmmakers. I mean, we were on. I mean, there was mental, emotional applause, physical applause as well for this. And, I think that needing to change the way things are done, or there's only one way to do it, which is to go out and do it. And, there's a lot, this has almost become a chic subject. I mean, I think we all agree that every time we open the paper, now we're looking at quotas. It's the DGA or some other statistic, or wonderful groups like what Gina Davis is doing and all of that. And I think that as an addition, certainly we're all under the same umbrella, we have an action plan. And that's really what I loved about this, because I think that all those groups and all those people getting together are doing amazing things. But Chiara came up with let's make a film. Let's take 7 of the most kick-ass women directors out there and make something that will be as funny, as commercial, as moving, and as original as possible. And we'll make it as a manifesto.
Do you sort of want to explain? I know the announcement came out yesterday. Do you sort of want to explain it to people so they
I'll
may
give you
not?
a quick, and then
Perfect.
everyone else jumped. Everyone
Yeah.
knows the same thing.
It's the first movie that you've announced.
Its working title is Together Now. Any suggestions? Wild Tales is taken, although it's one of the best films of short films I've ever seen. And so it will be, we announced all the directors yesterday. It's very exciting. Perhaps you read about it. So we have 7 directors. We have some actors attached, including Juliette Binoche. And the directors, should I just go for it? Or
Yeah.
Katja Lund, the aforementioned Katja Lund, who was the co-director on City of God and has an amazing story herself. Haifal Mansour, you may know, of course, from Vada. Melina Matsoukas, who is a video director for Beyonce, Lady Gaga, and Rihanna, but has also now done a pilot for television, and she's getting into drama, so she's now joined us. We have,
Catherine Hardwick,
Yes.
Robin Wright, and then we have Malgoska,
Who is a Polish director.
and Patricia Regan.
And Patricia Regan, which is a very interesting, a wonderful director who directed 33 with Juliette. And she directed a movie called Miracles from Heaven, which was one of the biggest studio helmed movies by a woman, which made $18.5 million in a weekend. And we've been talking with her, unfortunately she couldn't be here today, about the studio system and how she decided to take a break and make this her very next film after. A, she was exhausted, and B, she felt like she wanted to contribute and have a voice for the people who don't have a voice, which is 95% of the directors out there.
Avi, what drew you to be involved with this?
These incredible ladies and what they're proposing. It's an amazing opportunity. It's for everybody.
I mean, you live in New York. I know you don't live exactly in Hollywood, but you certainly deal with Hollywood all the time. I mean, sort of what is your bird's eye view of the issue of women in the business in terms of, as your job as a casting director?
I've worked with many. I've worked with like 7 or 8 women directors, and when it gets down to the wire on certain issues, for some reason it feels like the bottom line is that they don't have the strength from the counterparts around them to make the final decisions that are becoming problems with the film. I mean, I've got examples that I would love to share. But
Can you share any that are already public?
somebody go on and let me see if I can restate something in my
Will you at least talk about some of the films that you've cast? She's probably one of the most prolific
Yes.
casting directors, I don't know, working.
I
No,
think
I mean,
over
it's-
150 movies.
But it's just that
And it works
I've,
in the system.
I've been able to be lucky enough to work with some very wonderful directors, and I work on teeny budget and big budget.
But I guess back to your point, and then maybe you can take, when someone else is talking, you can think about the other. But when you say that they don't have enough strength, that somehow
I feel like I see the emails going back and forth, and I feel like they're being bullied. And then I'll kind of get in there, and we're all being bullied, and we're being bullied. We're being bullied. It's bullied. No matter what alternative you have to a problem, it's not going to work. I'm not saying because they're women. I'm not. I'm not.
But maybe you don't see that necessarily when it's a male director that you're casting.
I mean, the ratio, it's a funny world, this film business.
Right.
But I just feel like, bottom line, what I really feel is that for this organization to come to light is only going to be positive for everybody. Forget like the negative that people have been going through. That's been done. But now we can start something new with such grand energy for everybody. So that's the most exciting part of it.
Yeah.
We'll change something.
I mean, to digress a little
Already
bit.
did in a way.
Yeah, yeah, we'll change.
Well, I think the fact, for example, that we were few. Our first, I'm Italian, so our first board of director was in a pizzeria. We were 8 of us, and 5 months later, we are over 50 of us. Not on the board of directors, including the advisory board, otherwise it would be impossible to run this. We have people from all over the world, and I think this is amazing because even when we meet, for example, we have a meeting of the board of directors at least once per month, and it happens usually in somebody's house or in somebody's office, and even if during the day there might be some working situation because we're all in the same field. At night, we're all together sharing a dream. I think there is a saying in Brazilian that is very important. When you dream alone, it's just a dream. When you dream together, it's reality. And this is what it is. We're really dreaming together to shift the paradigm. And we can only do it together. And we can only, because I cannot believe that us being almost 52% of the population, we're not well represented. We're still the 20 to 30 years old, sexy, not extremely clever woman in most of the case. We're much more than that. We want to see more of that. And I know that men want to see more of that too, because a beautiful story, a complex character, it's good for everybody, not just for us. We love to watch movies about men. And the idea that men and women decided to do this together, I think it's really beautiful.
It's not a eat your spinach, a female ghetto kind of a thing where, and again, as Avi rightly said, we're going positive. We can criticize, we can talk about the statistics, all that's extremely important, but we felt we wanted to put something out there that would be enhancing, it would be motivating, and it would prove our case, which is that we can make movies, short movies. In this case, we will be making features several a year, starting the year after. We're very focal, very, very, very focused on our first film. Very important to get that off the ground and, and prep this summer, as early as this summer, but really that we have amazing men. There are amazing men out there who are, want to also see themselves in the women that are playing roles as well, because it's a male and female psyche that we all have. Juliette Binoche yesterday said it very, very well. And so it's a very inclusive organization. There will be men in the movies. We just want to have the protagonist in each movie be positive, motivating, empowering. Those are the only rules. Otherwise, the directors all have 100% creative control.
I see there's a lot of ladies in the audience, and I think it's important always that we share our personal stories. I mean, what has it been for each of you to be a woman in this business and in your particular field? Starting with you, yes, at the end.
You're coming to me.
How did you?
I'm trying to stay positive, but I guess.
But you can stay positive. I mean,
I guess one of the things that always gets me, because I am a can-do kind of person, and I put together a lot of films, the thing that always gets me is when a male counterpart will call me emotional. And that's happened a number of times, and I think, sometimes that's confused with being passionate or, willing something to happen, being powerful. But to be called emotional, I've had to hang up on some of my counterparts for doing that.
good for you.
And I'm proud of this very one particular film that you've had a lot to do with.
Yeah.
It's called Zookeeper's Wife, and this has been an 8.5-year passion for me. And it was
Are you serious? 8.5 years?
8.5 years.
And do you think it's because it's a female story?
I think there are a lot of different reasons. It's a World War II Holocaust film. It's a drama. Studios really don't make those kind of movies anymore, but this was an 8.5-year passion, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And, this is something that Jessica Chastain stars in. Nikki Caro directed. My client, Angela Workman, took it from start to finish as the writer. It's based on a book that's written by a woman. And Jessica wrote a love letter about the over 45 women in key positions who helped to get this movie made. And I have to say, it really is, besides this, like a pinnacle moment in my career.
Yeah, she actually wrote it, not to my own home. She actually wrote it for the Hollywood Reporter, but it's worth reading because she talks about the difference between what it's like to work on a set with all men, where she talks about that on most sets that there's 5 women, and sometimes there's only one. So.
And it just tested at over 90%. So we're super excited about it. It's a very good movie. Nikki's done an amazing job. And Jessica is brilliant.
And Carol, what has your experience been like being?
Well, I've seen a lot of things. I have to admit that I've been very lucky. I've been kind of hard charging and lucky, and the Chauncey Gardner of luck has happened to me, that I'm in the right place at the right time. I know nothing, but I'm given great responsibility, and I fake my way through it. Seriously, it's true. I started out as a photographer, and then I was a DP, and that was interesting in the days when there were 3 of us. Then I quickly got to production. I was Taft-Hartley'd into the DGA. In 1979, there were, I think, 14 women in the DGA, period. And I got on a film as a production manager, and I quickly demoted myself to be a second. So I've worked on as a second, as a first, as a production manager, a line producer, and all of that. I will say that on my first film, it was a very storied producer and director doing it. Adrian Lyne. It was his first Hollywood film. David Putnam's first Hollywood film. Jodie Foster starred, who's a friend, and both Avi and I have worked with a lot. And one of the people on the crew took a look at me and said, "This is the first time I actually wanted to hit on a second in my entire life." And I stood there, and since I was still a second and it was my first job, it made me feel quite, in this context and where I am today, it's kind of, it feels like a joke, but it was very hard. I didn't know how to answer. It was actually one of those moments that we talk about where you feel some shame, but in fact, it's the most absurd thing you've ever heard. Listen, I think that Patricia Riggin is a very good example. She was talking last night about the fact that on 33, she was in a coal mine, literally underground for 38 days, with boots, with a hard hat. This is the thing, when they don't think women can handle the big landscape, or 200 men on a crew, or anything, cite an example where somebody failed, or as a second can't run a crowd of extras of 2,000 people. That's my retort to it. It's like if you don't give women the chance to do what are these very, very hard jobs and manage and be leaders in the industry, find some statistics where they went, you know what, she was just not up to the job. And that's really where I think that the problem lies, is that if we have more chance and we keep succeeding, then I hope the numbers will go up and girls will all over the world say, I want to do that, instead of, oh, that's so hard and it's going to be so hard for me to do it.
I mean, this is something that, fascinates me, is that, I mean, directors, it's a terrible track record, but when cinematographers is even, like, worse. And, I mean, can you three address that, why that is? Or maybe Carol and...
No, but only because a DP is running the crew. They're running the grips. They're running the electric. For that, it feels like it's some kind of running a blue-collar operation. It's absurd. To be honest, when I was a DP, I got people to do more things for me, probably because I'm a woman, but because I cared about, the people. The hierarchy was not an issue for me at all. But that's why I think every time a woman gets a job, she should be, it's not an equal opportunity issue. They should be graded on the scale of whether they do a good job or not. But the DPs are particularly difficult because I think that's a very classically male job in the industry.
Go ahead, Amy.
I was trying to think of an experience, and some of them are just kind of personal, but when I was pregnant with my first son, I went up for a job, and it was a female producer and a male director, and I told them that I was pregnant. And after I did it, I went, I bet I don't get that job. I just felt like, I bet I don't get that job. And I didn't. And 2 weeks later, I went up for Little Man Tate. And Jody is so lovely. I was just like, I got to be honest. And she was like, great. It's just going to give you more. There were 4 women pregnant. We have 4 Little Man Tate babies, and they were all born within the same 6 months. I mean, I've got breastfeeding stories. But, I've got those kind of stories to where, I don't want to feel like I'm any different, because, I don't know, I feel like we can do 15 things at once. I don't know. Every woman I'm friends with, it's actually too hard to do one thing at once.
Well, I mean, this was something that sort of surprised me this week. Canadian producer here, because of all the extra security, she went to get she was working on the Canadian Pavilion, and she needs to breastfeed the baby, and they said, you can't bring the baby in. So she was having to go outside security to breastfeed the baby. And finally, after 3 days, I think someone from TIFFs had called Jerome, who's the head of the market, and they got the baby a badge. And then they were very unhappy that she spoke with me, though, and I think really got mad at her. And then a journalist emailed me last night, and same thing. She's breastfeeding. She brought a nanny, but she works out of the Palais and has to breastfeed the baby. So she's having to go outside, like across the street. So it goes to that multitasking that there's this, the baby thing probably has more to do with security, but like last year it was the heels. It's just, I think their point is like, we're women, and why is this happening? If we're trying to make women more prominent in the film business, anyway.
In my case, I think, besides some personal experience, I think what is happening on a daily basis is the language and the attitude. For example, when Sandra said, they tell her she's emotional, if it's a man, like let's say a director, let's put an example. If a female director, got upset, she's emotional, she's a bitch. If it's a man, he's a genius. He's throwing phone over the wall. It's a genius, you know.
He's tough and strong.
He's tough and strong. He's, you know, he has that creative sense. And I think even the language, you know, it's different the way, you know, we are represented. Like almost I feel when we talk about money, has to be a male issues. So if it's creativity, maybe, but money, you're not being as a producer, you're not being taken necessarily that serious as a man. So if there is, you know, a conflict or a different ideas, the male opinion, for some reason, is more valuable. Like, let's ask, you know, a male figure, and it's more valuable. Like, even Patricia was saying, as a female director herself, she worked her career, all her career, to almost build up just a credit, you know, and then be able to do what she wants to do. So of course there is a different attitude in how we are portrayed, how we're perceived, how we work with male. I think it's just a matter of shifting and changing. 8 years ago, if I would have told my neighbors that are very Republican, that an African American, you know, president will be the president of the United States, they couldn't believe it, right? 8 years later, Carson candidated himself. You know, nobody said, but he's black, because they shift the paradigm by, you know, whatever Obama figure and what he did. You know, it was a positive shift. Although then they chose Trump, so I don't know.
I mean, do you think it's even conscious on the part of, like, just let's say I hate using the word studio, but do you think it's even conscious, or is it just so, you know, people are so used to doing business with men in Hollywood because they are cronies? I mean,
Do I have to? No, we can tag team it if you want. What do you think?
maybe.
What do you think?
I mean, you all have a much better insight than I do, but I do think it's frightening when you see that female directors aren't directing these big tentpoles. Like, I don't understand that. So, yeah.
I don't know. We've been talking to our directors, the ones that have been here, Katya and Patricia. It's been such an interesting discussion. Often they don't want to direct, other than for their careers, the big tentpoles that aren't very interesting stories to them. But sometimes that's the way to get to the next film. I mean, the boy wonder out of Sundance will get, from a $200,000 or less film, a $25 million film. Good, bad, or different. You know, listen, I think the only way to fight this is by making good films, good women, good stories, and change this by the box office. And and that's for the people who want to go out and have big studio careers. I think no one a big studio career, you want to make the movie you want to make. If it costs $30 million and your stars cost X, then you have to work with the studio system. I think that the landscape is changing a little bit to try to be a little more positive in terms of this democratization of how we watch the content. So people can make things for less. We're watching things in a different way. I'm sorry that the old proscenium theaters are falling off one by one, because I still think movies have an enormous place in our imagination and our culture. But I think doing more is the only way that we can even the playing field. We don't want more, we don't want less. We'd have to make as many movies that make money as possible, but then that means we have to greenlight them as well. So I know Sandra deals with this, and AV too. I mean, you've got your male directors who may want a female, in a role, and they go, well, no, you could only choose two. And I'm sure you've proposed.
Wait, what? Can you?
Fabulous actors. Well, that's a whole different.
Well, that's, proposing female great actors who aren't going to get the chance when there are only two that are greenlightable.
Right. I mean, a film fell apart last week that I'm working on, and I brought up a name of this female actress. She's coming out in two of the biggest films next year, but she wasn't on the list. But that's the international, I don't know.
Pre-sale.
That's
What's
a
the
whole
Q? What's it
different-
called? The Q score? I forget what.
It was called TVQ. Remember those? That was TV, though. But now TV TV has become much better. I mean, which is proof of something, isn't it? That the audience, because the audience, mainly millions, can watch TV, want to see female characters. But will they pay $12 or $15 to go to the theater to do that?
I mean, look at Pitch Perfect. I mean, that movie was gigantic. So,
If you make a good movie, they will come.
There you go. There you go.
well, I mean, we are at Cannes, and this is a big international film market. I mean, this raises a good point. Like, what is it like when you're trying to finance a movie with overseas? Like, where does this whole issue come in there in terms of female stars? Is it an issue or not? I don't know.
I don't know if it's that different than males.
Okay.
I really don't. I don't, the international, what people mean internationally,
I know, yeah.
boggles
The
my
mind.
brain.
I just think, it's really interesting right now that, studios are talking about women. And I have a client who just went into Studio 8, writer-director, and they said, we want you to find us a female-driven actioner. We are looking for that right now, and we're looking for you to do it. And so I think, what we've been doing and what all the other organizations that have been talking about it and all the press that's been given to this issue is opening up a real dialogue. So for me, it's, maybe I'm being a little Pollyannish, but I like where this is going.
Yeah.
But I think we're at the core of it, and we're not going to wait. We're going to do it too.
Yeah. Well, I think we should open it up for questions. Oh, whoa. Is there someone? Okay. I think you had your hand up like.
Hello. In Italian, Italian writer and filmmaker, and I was lucky. It's not working.
I don't.
I was lucky enough. Me with my first
The mic's not working.
working. No.
Yeah, it's not.
So. Okay. So I was also lucky in 15 years to make 3 movies as a director, because in Italy I am a good example. It's so much difficult to make movies but I'm very, very interested in what Carol says, that the most important is to make movies. So now I'm in this huge struggle, and I want you to give me your suggestion. I have several scripts ready to shoot, but I feel and I know that if I propose a comedy, I find much easier the money. If I propose, I'm writing lately a lot of script about important, since I am a mother, the last years I write a lot of script about extreme situation of children in war, in situation. I know that I will not be heard at all. So really my struggle is, do I have to give up what I feel that I I am today in order to, I know that to make movies the most important example and the most important action, but my struggle really now is what is more important, to work or
Thank you.
All I can say is that I applaud that you're what you're doing and your emotion about doing it, and that trees grow through cement. I mean, I think that there's no real answer. I think you persist. It's staying power, battle of attrition, and coming out to places like this, meeting people, then you're going to know one of the great casting directors in the world. Oh my God, okay. That's good. But I mean, I think you have to leverage your.
I have so much to thank Avi, because my first film, she helped so much.
If everyone heard her first film, Avi actually helped her cast and make.
I was waiting, you remember, in your waiting room for 4 hours, and then you let me enter. I was so lucky.
She was busy. She was busy with a lot of.
She read my script. There was a film student, Italian film student in New York City. I mean, it was like
4 hours? No.
no, but that was
Take that off the record.
so lucky that
Who else has a question? We'll go with you first. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you?
You're gonna have to step up.
Yeah.
So I'm not in the film business. I'm a viewer, and I'm also a little bit of a dinosaur. And I find that the films that are out there don't interest me at all. They're box office hits. I looked at the statistics in the book that shows you what the highest grossing and all this stuff, and there weren't any of them that were particularly interesting to me. Movies about women are interesting to me, so I applaud your upcoming efforts. I just wish there were more interesting movies.
I think that's a common lament.
Is it? Do you guys hear that a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
I try
Yeah.
to find something to go to see, and I go to cable, basically.
You go to what?
Cable. I mean, how many dinner parties or places have you been where people are not talking about the last Bertolucci or the last, but they're saying, hey, did you see that episode of House of Cards? I mean, all well, but the television is really developing a lot of this material now, showing that people want to watch women in primary kind of
Right.
roles.
I'm her back there. But you're going to have to come up here to talk in the mic.
Here, I'll be the mic.
Oh.
Oh my God, thank you so much. So,
Uh-oh.
I don't.
There you go.
Okay. So my question is, do you guys have any? I'm so nervous. Do you have any suggestions for international women who want to make it in America? And I'm an actress. I'm 22-year-old, and I'm from China. Do you think it's better for women like me to go back to our home countries to pursue acting? Thank you.
I think that's
That's an Avi question.
I do. Yeah, I do too. I cast a lot of international films, and I love actors from everywhere. And one of the biggest problems that I face is I fall in love with someone and then I can't get them a visa. So I think that it's. You're American? Well, and you live in China? Your accent. Well, then work on it. I mean, otherwise you're typecast, and that's what it is. You know. Well, you know, I wouldn't generalize that either, because I think the world's opening up to where in American films, you know, I also fight for people to use their own accent because it makes everything more interesting, because it's not such a small world. It's a, you know, it's hard. Keep doing what you're doing.
I would try to develop material, which is also very hard. I mean, I'm fighting the fight every day to get. I mean, Sandra's my agent too. It's not. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. We know we're fighting so hard of many years on a certain project that we're trying to do together.
And we have many things in development.
I've been very lucky to sell a lot of things. Getting them greenlit, and then that process will be for another panel. Is another thing. But the way I've been living overseas for a long time, and I decided to go back and get it back into the business. And I knew the only way to do that as a producer, it's a very different thing, is to find material that I want to see, and then go in and fight for it, and then sell it, then cast it, then put the kind of characters that you want to play in front of someone and make it such a bloody good story that they can't refuse it, because the accent thing is a real thing. I mean, you're going to have to play a character that has that background. I mean, losing it all together is also a possibility. People do it. I mean, you're speaking very beautifully, so already.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a screenwriter, and I have my first big project. I'm very passionate about it. It's a female-driven action with 3 generations of family of very intelligent, strong women. My question is about mentoring. I'm finding that seems to feel like a very big hurdle because I have so much to learn and so much I want to give to the industry and to women in general. And so I'm curious about mentoring opportunities. Where do we find our mentors, or how do we get what we need?
Well, as we do it together, and we're talking right now, different possibility, we will eventually, later on, address these issues as well, because we have so much talent involved from directors, actors, and so we will definitely want to do that. We are a non-profit organization, and our mission statement is to produce movies about women to create awareness, but also, to bring education where we can and when we can. Now, even though we had a lot of, attention, which is good, and a lot of support, and please support us on Facebook, on social media, on the website, wedoittogether.org. I had to do that. Oh, by the way, there is a big news. 4 days ago, ATTN did a video on us, and we got 2,500,000 hits on Facebook in only 4 days, or 4 or 5 days. So that's big. And was about the role of how we portray women in movies. So yes, we are going to address, because one of the problem as a filmmaker, and in general, and more so as a woman, is the loneliness, right? Either you are in the system, and to get to the system as a man, it's hard. As a woman, it's mission impossible, right? Then you get there, and you make it. But we feel that, for example, We Do It Together really push on the fact that it's a together movement. It's a network between each other. It's wants to give that also through different, conferences, different, mentoring from different artists. But we are at the beginning, so we have to produce our first feature film that was announced yesterday, and then little by little we'll try to address what we can, because we do believe that it all starts from unity and education and awareness. Thank you. You know about Meryl Streep as organization.
Ladies, I might get into a subject that might be another panel of its own.
Good.
But let's talk about film festivals, because there's also a lack of female projects in the film festival. And I've talked to a couple of film festival directors, and they always say that there's not enough female submissions from women directors.
Because movies from women directors are not really being produced. I mean, the percentage are always the same. We cannot expect that we produce, if we look at the numbers, and since 2002 in the United States, numbers have not changed. So it's we're in 2016, and 14 years. If numbers of the percentage of directors is still 7%, we cannot expect that 7% directors will make a movie that is good for a festival, and the percentage is always the same. We need to change that percentage. The problem is in the screen and behind the screen. We don't produce enough movies that portrays roles of the women, and also behind the scene. We don't hire enough women, so they feed each other, I believe.
You brought up something that made me think. Do you also think there's a real issue with the roles that women get in movies?
Absolutely. And that was the ATTN video, by the way.
What was sort of that they're sexualized, or?
They're very sexualized. 73% of from the Gina Davis, I think, Institute, movies in United States, they have as a leading character a male. So that leaves us with a small percentage of female. And the female roles are mostly related to who they sleep with. So they're either girlfriend or wife or lover. And then there is a little percentage, or mother. And then there is a little percentage that portrays the women, how they are. So we're usually portrayed very beautiful, very young, 20 to 30 years old, and not extremely clever most of the time, right?
And I don't mean to be negative, but does it ever make you crazy when the whole age thing, when like a male lead is cast and the love interest, the female, is so much younger?
Well, what can we do?
Of course, it makes us crazy. But, it's interesting. I represent writers and directors. I'm a lit agent. And, one of my projects is about a very prominent Supreme Court justice that's going to be made this year. And the star of it has been really adamant that she find a female director, which I think we have. I'm not ready to announce it. But, I think part of it is when actresses have that kind of power that they're attached to a project, that they really support, or when producers have a project, women producers, that they're supporting women to be the directors of the pieces.
Right, yeah. I'll let the gentleman ask a question in the spirit of... Plus he's been taking the...
Hi guys, I am the house videographer here at the Pavillion, and I have 9 very smart film students that work for me, that help me with the videography stuff here. And I was speaking to a couple of them individually about the importance of the role of women in film, as I try to do as much as possible. And one of them, his perspective was, well, I don't really see the problem. I see a lot of strong women on TV. I don't really see that there's a problem. And I was trying to explain to him otherwise. And then I had another one that was talking to me about how important it was for him to do more about that as he's, growing as a filmmaker and asking for suggestions of how to do that. So I was just wondering what you thought I could say to both of those students.
How many law students were there, female law students were there at Harvard in 1952? I don't know the answer to that. I think that's what, when I meet people, they go, I was the first, these 80, 90-year-old women, I was the first this, I was the first that. I think it's numbers. I think that we have to do everything we can to enable people to compete on an even playing field, and to consider not consider as a meritocracy the woman that is standing in the room as much or more than the man, but they have to win it on merit. I mean, it's not a quota system where we have to have a certain number of women. There was talk in Hollywood, you probably remember better than I, that they were going to legislate. There's a PGA title, as you probably know, that now only certain people can get credit on film if you do certain things as a producer. They were trying to figure out whether they could do that with the number of women behind the camera. All of these initiatives are admirable, but I just think that we have to be able to give more opportunity. And in our way, that's the only thing we're doing, is we're making, it's a manifesto, as Chiara says often. And it's a small way, but we're going to just err on finding great women, not just women to do things. We're going to find great stories, period, and show that they can be as popular and compelling.
Just one more. I'm really sorry if someone's been raising their hand and I haven't called them.
Hello, actually it's a question for Avi. You've mentioned the Gina Davis Institute and the ratio of men to women being 1-3 or 1-4, depending whether it's film or television. And I understand that's across all casting. Have you found that over the last couple of years, with all the efforts that Gina Davis has actually made, that producers and directors are more open to your suggestions that because he's called Fred, he could have been called Frida? And, I mean, are people more open? I remember about 5 years ago in Los Angeles, where I live, Gina was finding a tremendous amount of problems. She was going round and round to the studios. Everyone was nodding, but no one was doing anything. But there's a new climate and a new shift. Are you seeing that yourself?
Well, that's what this is. Part of, part of. And it has to do with every ethnicity. It's not just men and women. It's everything. So I'm conscious of it. We're conscious of it.
How about Sandra Bullock? Remember the role she played? The movie didn't do that well, but she said, "Why don't we make it a woman?"
Which one was that?
Oh, it was Our Greatest Crisis.
There you go.
I think that character was a man.
The character was
Yeah.
definitely a man. There are some women out there, from Reese Witherspoon to Sandra Bullock.
I mean, we've switched it a lot in films that.
in the casting, when you're going through the roles.
Well, after reading the script.
At that stage.
After reading the script, before I put out a breakdown or talk to the director, one of the questions is usually not just for women, but where can we open this and explain this story? And it's happened with leads to where it's been switched to a woman. It's great. Yeah, I do believe it's coming. So I mean, I'm feeling it. I mean, I think this is what work we have to do. We have to do so much work. Yeah.
It has been, thank you so much for the conversation and letting me moderate it.